Entering the children's room, I saw my daughter sitting on her mother's lap, listening to her bedtime story. At first glance, I realized that something was wrong. She wasn't looking at the pages, but covered her ears with both hands and had buried her face in her mother's shoulder. She was scared. What story had they been reading? Was it David fighting Goliath? Was it Daniel being thrown to the lion's den? Then I heard her mother reading, Adam listened to Eve, then he took of the fruit and ate, and suddenly they were ashamed. So that's what my daughter couldn't bear. That bothered her so much that she didn't want to hear and see how the story continued.
Actually, this is the worst story in the Bible. Adam and Eve had a wonderful life living with God in Eden. The consequence of their decision and their situation was disastrous, separating from God and outside of paradise. What might have been on the first couple's mind? How does one feel being completely secure, happy, free, strong, and unencumbered? And how does it feel if one loses all of this from one minute to the next? The biblical report describes how Adam and Eve felt with a single word: naked. They felt naked, guilty, unprotected, and weak. One simply can't bear it, and they couldn't stand it either. Instinctively, they began plucking leaves from the trees to cover themselves, making coverings for themselves. Most ridiculous.
Possibly it gave them a short moment of relief. They might have imagined this solved the problem. No longer were they naked. But to be honest, concealing a problem is not unknown to us. Deceiving ourselves or others that everything is fine is a widely spread disease among humans. Constantly, our Western culture produces new ways of distracting us from unpleasant reality. We have perfected a pattern of diversion. We don't like to be alone, or insecure, or overwhelmed, and that's why we consume, surf the internet, chat, play, drink, all dance, until we feel better. It's all quite normal. We're used to it. Apparently, pulling the wool over one's eyes is an age-long method. As can be seen, humans developed this immediately after turning away from God and after the fall of man. Self-deceit has become our guideline in a life without God. The serpent promised that we would be like God, so we can manage without him.
In the early history of planet Earth, humans erected a monument of self-idolatry, a tower reaching to the heavens. Their plans came to nothing, but they never gave up their high-handedness. The place where the tower was built was called Babel, or Babylon. In the course of history, it has become again and again a symbol of human rebellion. Babylon considered herself to be richer, mightier, more cultivated, and more religious than any other city in the world, making them seem invincible. The kings of Babylon celebrated this allusion to excess. Several texts of the Old Testament explicitly bear witness to this fact. The Neo-Babylonian Empire even dared to conquer Judah and to destroy Jerusalem and the Lord's temple. Just as Jerusalem or Zion stands for the city of God in the Old Testament, Babylon symbolizes the city of God's enemies. It's therefore not surprising that the name of Babylon reappears at the end of the book of Revelation, when God puts an end to sin and judges every person's works.
There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth.
The mother of prostitutes. And indeed, she seems to live up to her name. The angel said that she's fooled around with the mighty of the world, has made all businessmen rich and gotten all other citizens addicted. And she's proud of it. What does this woman stand for? Of course, a power opposing God, but in which way? A prostitute doesn't only sell her body, but is also an actress selling a false view. For example, the illusion that a pretty woman lusts after you. Or that a rich female companion offers a trace of luxury or status or greatness. In reality, you pay for it, of course. Waking up the next morning, you're still the same miserable guy with less money in your pocket. A prostitute can't take away the punter's loneliness. Indeed, the illusion of intimacy afterwards intensifies the feeling of emptiness. And this is exactly the problem. If you get involved with this Babylon, an illusionary world, this world replaces a real one with a poor copy. For a moment, everything feels better, but it isn't. It doesn't matter how you console yourself, your problems will be solved. The fig leaves will leave you naked. Reality is still the same. The more you crave for diversion, the more deserted and burdening reality becomes.
Another aspect of this woman's personality disturbs me even more. In the Old Testament, prostitution stands, most of all, for idolatry among the people of God. God calls those who have pledged allegiance to him, but got more and more involved with other gods, like an unfaithful woman amusing herself with her lovers. Thus he expresses his dismay that it's his friends, those who know him, for whom he gave all who betray him. They should know better what they have in him. No, they believe that they will find wisdom or shelter or wealth or fun somewhere else. God says, they have forsaken me. They've dug their own springs, their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water. This sounds very much like Babylon. We create our own world, our own religion. Religiosity replacing God is, of course, the ultimate seduction.
According to the book of Revelation, the Spirit will reach its climax at the very end of this world's history, namely amongst those who profess to be Christians, God's people. This really gets under my skin. I want to be among those who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. I've experienced that when the going gets tough, I can only rely on Jesus. He strengthens me, comforts me, and leads me on the right path, but the world I live in is not that clear. This world of ours knows 1,000 ways that are said to bring inner peace, strength, healing, and fulfillment. Today, everything is possible. You can partake in everything, be anything, just don't decide on one way. I don't want to be narrow-minded and inflexible. By nature, I'm an open-minded person. But by all means, I want to hold on to Jesus and not be distracted by anything.
Some time ago, I withdrew into silence and intentionally did without my laptop and my mobile phone. I even dispensed with speaking. Also, my food was quite simple. The lack of stimuli quickly taught me how little balance and inner peace there was within me. Only after a few hours of silence, my head started to complain and I craved for more diversion. More and more, I realized that most of my activities are misused as diversion. Working, TV, shopping, chocolate at times, Facebook, even my dedication to the church. Often this distraction prevents the sober view of myself, my own nakedness, in order not to face my own problems and the difficult questions of life. In my experience of utter silence, I myself was the only thing remaining, and this was very little. Maybe this is the reason why some people feel closer to God in the quiet of nature, where they have time and silence. When God revealed himself to the prophet Elijah, he wasn't in the wind or in the earthquake or fire, but in a silent whisper. Now, he could have done it otherwise. But in the turmoil of appointments and messages, activities, even the loudest call would only be one amongst many. He would have no room. He couldn't reach me because I'm not with myself. God knows that he can only answer my questions provided I allow them. Our yearning can only be satisfied by him if we stop chasing after vicarious satisfaction.
In my view, it's amazing how God deals with our elusive world. In the very beginning, when the first humans covered themselves with fig leaves for fear of nakedness, cut him to the quick. He met them and provided them with real and suitable clothes that made them feel better not only momentarily, but clothes good for their daily lives. With that, he indicated that he has real solutions for each of their problems. But thereafter, they had to abandon their self-made solutions.
In the movie Everything You Want, the young artist Abby meets an interesting young man at university. Quinn is witty and funny and evidently interested in her, but she rejects him, making it very clear that she's happy in her long-standing relationship. Her boyfriend, Cy, is indeed a great guy, but it takes a while until the viewer understands that Cy only exists in her imagination. Abby got stuck in her childhood fantasies and has been living with this notion of his existence ever since she was 5. To guess the rest of the film isn't very difficult. Quinn doesn't give up. Abby, being attracted to him, feels more and more torn between her illusionary world and reality. Will she continue running away or have a real relationship? In the midst of this phase, she tells her imaginary lover, "I can't imagine life without you."
This is the question in Revelation 18. Whom can I give up living with? Living without Babylon? Living without the Lamb? Living in a made-up world or having real relationships? Living as a prostitute or bride? Revelation 12 describes those belonging to Jesus as a pure woman who is pursued by the dragon. She's meant to be the bride of no one less than the son of the King of Kings. The last 3 chapters of Revelation describe her fabulous story. One day, the prince will set out on his white horse together with his army to free his chosen ones, once and for all, from the claws of the dragon. He will defeat the monster. Then they will celebrate their wedding, and he will take her with him to his castle. This vision has inspired so many fairy tales, it's hard to imagine that it describes something real. But the book of Revelation states, reality will become even more beautiful than a dream. Jesus will come back and take us home to be with him. He lives, he is real, and he will break into our reality. Then all illusion will fade.
Today, the great prostitute is still sure of her power. She says, "Here I sit, enthroned like a queen, and will never face misfortune." And this reminds me of a scene in the movie Chicago, where Velma Kelly, a chanteuse who has killed her husband and sister, sings about her life in one gig. I see the brunette actress dancing shamelessly with several men while she provocatively and laughingly announces, "No, I'm no one's wife, but oh, I love my life." Likewise, Madame Babylon says, "No, I'm not a widow and will never mourn." But she's mistaken. The angel predicts that one day, reality will catch up with her. Every imaginable catastrophe will come on her. All of her crimes will strike her. On that day, none of her lovers will repeat their lovers' vows. On the contrary, in horror, the mighty ones will disassociate themselves from her, proclaims the angel. The merchants will mourn because Babylon, their most lucrative source of profit, is no more. On that day, the biggest and most colourful bubble in world's history will burst. Millions of people will awake realising they've been deceived. But too late.
That's why the king will first send his messenger, a mighty angel. The angel will proclaim in a loud voice, "Fallen! Fallen is Babylon the Great. Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins. Babylon will perish. Nothing of her will remain. Break with her now. She has no future, but you have. Everything is ahead of you. Without her, life will really get going. Life eternal."